in some ways I think this is a follow-on to Diego's question and the answer yesterday.
Whose question?
Diego. I just wanted to ask about fear and the best way for the truth seeker to just approach fear and perhaps just the best way to approach fear. It seems that fear can arrive very fast in a very visceral, bodily manner, and it would seem that the intellectual way to process fear or to handle fear is to remind oneself that you are not fundamentally the mind body, but it just seems that it's a very quick sort of limbic brain event. So I just wanted to ask about that.
Physical fear may be just this type of limbic event, but psychological fear, there is always a very fleeting thought of me as a person. And that it lingers, then this fleeting thought of me creates a set of reactions in the body that lingers as a sense of impending doom. And we forgot the thought that has triggered it. And the thought, that which triggers fear, is our mortality. So the liberation from fear is a liberation from our mortality. So it's consciousness that gets liberated from fear as it gets liberated from the limitations that we had superimposed onto it. Now, before the thought of I as a limited person comes in, there might be in the body a sense of me which is more physical in a sense. But that's not fear at that level. This sense of me feels quite good. It feels cute and sweet. And then that triggers a thought of me, and then at some point I realize, if I am. In the beginning, in other words, in the beginning, it's cute to be separate, as long as I have not explored all the implications. It's like, it's cute to write a big check for a Ferrari. You see? But then you have to look at the implications. So that's the same thing here. It's cute to be a separate person. I can move in the room, I can dance, I can do all kinds of things. But then I'm mortal, And then that's the price you have to pay, which is hefty. For whatever pleasure you have, being this little person moving around in the room. You see, so usually this first thought of I as a separate person doesn't trigger fear. It is felt cute, but then the fear comes in.
So I was watching a movie the other day with Clint Eastwood, The Eiger Sanction, which is set on a mountain.
Yes, I've seen this movie.
And I'm very scared of heights. And so whenever the camera sort of started to look back down the mountain, I was extremely afraid, which is silly in hindsight.
It's a problem because you're tall. I think we have found the source.
So is the investigation for the truth seeker probably before the movie to take a look at the friendly sense of me and to sort of work on that, and then by the time the movie comes up there'll be no fear, or is there a different reaction in the moment?
I don't know whether this fear of height is something. It may be also something which is not psychological, in that sense that it may be wired in certain bodies differently than in others. I mean, it may be a natural warning signal. It may not be psychological. I guess it is, but...
But logically, there's no reason for me to be afraid of the movie.
Oh yeah, but yeah, that's true. But the movie recreates conditions that could be that are so close to reality that I remember being in a simulator, in a space simulator in Disney World or Disneyland or wherever, with my kid, and you see a movie and you move with this spacecraft, and you stop and you move, and it feels so real that you feel it in your guts. You see, there is nothing psychological. It's a well-made illusion. I think the main issue is the fear of absolute disappearance, because, as I've already said, there is a simple way out of fear. You just kill yourself. If you are not afraid of dying, there is no problem. You can always kill yourself when it becomes too hot. That's for people who say the problem is something else, right? It's not true. The problem is absolute disappearance. I guess there is a certain aspect of fear which is natural or which is functional. And it depends, I guess, also of our upbringing and circumstances in our life. I think if you have been used to climbing on trees with your parents as a child, a very young child, then you are not afraid of height.
It seems, though, that absolute liberation requires the transcendence of the fear of death.
Yeah.
And so it just seems difficult for the truth seeker to practice that one almost. It's almost as if when the fear comes in...
Well, yeah, you cannot practice it, but you can prepare for this understanding by investigating what is it that makes you feel that as consciousness you are attached to the body or mortal or dependent on the body, etc. So that opens the possibility for consciousness to be independent. You see, that If consciousness is is a realm of its own, if you will, beyond time, beyond space. And we have this intuition that consciousness is something different from objects. But it is really a very peculiar type of experience, unlike any other type of experience. So that should take us in the right direction and awake our interest in investigating. The fact that there is no evidence whatsoever for consciousness to be separate and limited. If you investigate this question deeply, is mind-blowing. You see, it's something remarkable, because we blindly believe it to be limited and to be, I don't know, made of matter, something like that. A very simplistic view of it, if we think about it. Materialism is very, very implicit in society. Even our religions are materialist. In our religions, God is a super robot, somehow. I should start recording.
Thank you.
To me, it doesn't seem as though fear of disappearance, or I'll put it a different way, it doesn't seem to me that disappearance is as fearful as pain or being disabled is. Because I have the experience of disappearing every night when I go to sleep.
In fact, you don't have the experience of disappearing. That's the beauty of it. But, as I said, when you have too much pain, you can take medication, you can find ways.
I'm just wondering whether fear of death is really at the basis of all fears, that's all.
Yeah. Well, then you can apply the philosophical suicide argument.
And there's the fear of doing it.
Yeah, but it places you really in front of your theoretical view that it is in fact pain. No, because we are more afraid of dying than of having pain. And people take a lot of pain rather than die. So our concepts are in one place, but what we really feel and what we really do is in a different place, in most cases. And I can understand that someone would commit suicide because the pain is too strong. You know,
Yeah, I think I agree. Fear of suicide would be kind of a visceral fear, whereas the concept of disappearance is not so frightening, because it's just a concept. It's not visceral.
it's not. It becomes visceral when there is nothing after. Because precisely that's what I said, when you fall asleep, you don't really disappear. The world disappears, but you don't. The experience of the world disappears, but you don't. So that is certainly not the experience of absolute disappearance. And as a result, there is no fear generated by the evocation of this experience. You see, because you remain. So it's really the wrong evocation.
It's the wrong what?
Evocation of death. It is not a frightening death, because it's not really a death. The death that makes us really panic is the one of absolute disappearance.
Are you saying also that the going under anesthesia is not so fearful because we still remain?
We remain. The trick is we always remain. So that which creates the fear is the belief that we don't. Which is the belief that consciousness is body dependent. Somehow the revelation of the universality of consciousness is covered, is prevented by an armor of fear. That is the real primal fear, that's the basic fear.
Is there any way to have the experience of dying while still alive?
Yes.
You mean nirvikapa samadhi or something like that?
Yeah. To let go, to let go of everything you are attached to, everything you believe in, everything that can give you some reassurance, some comfort, some certainty, some security. Letting go of all the crutches to discover that we can walk without them. When we discover that consciousness is not human, it's not attached to anything, that it exists on its own, and that on top of that it creates all this display, there is no room for fear there. Then we may perhaps go back to the old patterns of fear, but the foundation for those patterns is still is always a limited consciousness.
Francis?
Mm-hmm.
How to explain...
Just a second. Yes?
How to explain the case of people who actually do commit suicide? My understanding is that their psychological suffering is so overwhelming that the thought of continuing in that seems worse than being dead. Somehow the fear of death has been overcome.
The belief to be a person is so strong. The identification with the sufferer is so strong, and the sufferer with the body is so strong that in order to eliminate the suffering, they kill the sufferer, and the sufferer being identified with the body, the way to kill the sufferer is to kill the body. I mean, that's how I see it. That's a kind of reasoning. And in the case of, as I said, in the case of physical pain, there can be some logic to it. However, in the case of psychological suffering, since the psychological suffering has its source in the belief in a separate sufferer, it's a kind of a catch-22.
Do you think certain kinds of drugs that are supposed to expand the limitations of the individual experience. Do you think they're useful?
I wouldn't recommend that at your age. I mean, they are going to, at your place over there, they are going to say, what's going on with Stanley? So there they're on the table, you look, oh, how beautiful. Oh, this fork is remarkable.
Are those legitimate experiences of
What?
Are those legitimate experiences of expansion?
I had someone coming to my satsang. He had 100 LSD trips in his life, which is a lot. You know. His first trip, he had this mystical experience. The 99 following trips, nothing. I mean, it was a trip, but not the mystical, whatever he called experience. So he should have stopped after one trip. No, you cannot, everything in our life can be the trigger for our awakening to the universality of consciousness. But I think it's easier to come here and hear it than to inject or to smoke some substance. We could prepare some cookies for him.
At the next retreat, maybe we could have them.
The problem is, I have to be careful with this guy because he's a scientist, you know. So and he's an experimental scientist. In my case, it's not that great on the spiritual aspect of it. I've tried that in my early years, but not much. But it was not. But some people have said yes.
Actually, we are planning to take Stanley to a bar, Francis. He wanted to go and take a look at some bar. Stanley.
He wanted to look at. Oh.
I want to go back to a follow-up on yesterday's question, Francis. I don't know who asked, then you said it is primarily the fear of death. But I want to approach the same question in a different manner. From the object perspective, from the creation perspective, not necessarily from the destruction perspective, what is the real essence of creation for an object to understand? Meaning, can an object contemplate itself to understand why am I created and trace back to the source?
An object cannot contemplate anything.
Anything?
An object can only be contemplated, but an object can never contemplate. You see, there are many objects, but there is only one contemplator. This contemplator contemplates through all kinds of instruments called minds. But in fact, whatever it contemplates is always its own creation. And its own creation is not separate from himself or herself, itself. It is made of the same substance. We cannot understand clearly that everything is consciousness, usually only because we identify consciousness with mind. We think of consciousness as being some kind of a thought, something subtle. And that's why we are reluctant when someone tells us, well, everything is consciousness. We say, oh, wait a minute. No, that's metal. That's not conscious. It's not mind. I can make this clear distinction between thoughts that are subtle, that are located in my dreams, and these things that are compact, that I can touch, that I can see, and that's matter. But then, when we are open to the possibility that both thoughts and matter are made of the same substance, then it's different, you see. It's not like the world is made of thought. It's that the world is made of consciousness and thought is made of consciousness. That's a different proposition. Then it seems much more possible that the same substance creates both thoughts and matter, you see. And that there is only one reality or only one substance and only one creator. That makes sense too. And then with that comes this intuition that there is only us. We are alone. You see, we are the only one. And we cannot even say we are the only one in the universe, because this universe is in us, right? This universe is our universe. It's our body, in a sense. So as a result, we are the only one, but we don't feel alone. We feel alone if there are others out there that we need or who can threaten us. But if we are whole and complete, alone, not lonely.
The reason why I was asking this, looks like in the creation process, the creation creates the creator and the created, and it enjoys the created through the creator.
The creator and the creation, they are concepts. But they don't have a real existence. The unmanifested consciousness creates the world. but the world is made of this consciousness. It doesn't stand. It doesn't have a separate existence. But it is not. This world is not compact or continuous. There are intervals of infinity between its points, if you will. So that the space in this image that stands for the unmanifested is always present in the presence of the manifestation. When we are not aware of the interval seems non-existence, and it seems to us that there is objective continuity, that you see two objects or two events are completely connected to one another. But when we understand the true nature of the interval, in fact, they are infinitely separate, so to speak, because they are separated by the infinity of the interval. Just that we don't memorize this element, this experience. In a sense, with the object, we forget our true nature, and with our true nature we forget the objects. My teacher used to call death the great forgetting, just as sleep is the forgetting of the events of the day. Death is a forgetting of our incarnation somehow. So if for us the incarnation is all there is and the space is nothing, we lose everything. If for us the objects are like nothing and the space is everything, we lose nothing. So we have to understand, or at least to be open to the possibility that the space is everything. That's where the life is. That's where the happiness is. That's where we are, really. And from that space we contemplate. Right now. We have always been there. That's our real abode.
haven't heard you mention gratitude very often, if at all. And I wondered, is that because there's something inherent in the concept of gratitude, that you're grateful for something or you're grateful to someone, that it's a duality?
You say I don't mention the concept of gratitude?
I haven't been conscious of hearing it, and it's something that's always been very meaningful to me. And so I think I would have, but maybe I missed it.
The best way for us to show gratitude is to be happy. If you love a child and you give this child a Christmas present, what you really want is a smile when they unwrap the gift, right? You don't want the mom of the child saying, say thank you to Aunt Nancy, and the side is, thank you. No, you couldn't care less about the thank you. But if the child opening the box says, wow, if it comes like unexpected and beautiful and sweet, and then that's the best expression of gratitude you could think of, right? That's what you want. I think the gratitude, what life wants from us is to be happy. And yes, there is this. My teacher used to say to be thankful for having had the opportunity of this experience between life and death. You see? Yes. But ultimately, you see, the gratitude goes towards our true nature. So we are kind of in awe of our own being. That's what gratitude is about. It's awe also. I thought I was small. I'm huge. I thought I was lost. I'm found. Well, thank you for those Thanksgiving thoughts. They are of season.
I wanted to ask about inference. Is it correct to say that from the perspective of the mind, deep sleep is only ever inferred?
That which is inferred is the interval between two thoughts. The deep sleep state is something else. It's a mind mode. Mind mode. But in fact, we simplify it by saying, okay, we have 3 mind modes, right? Or we have 2 mind modes. Being awake, being asleep. We know it's not true. We know that there are modes in between, right? We can, especially as you get older, you explore all these modes. Or also when you are younger and you are at work after a good meal. So there are all kinds of modes of consciousness and of mind. But basically, to make things simple, we see, okay, there are three. There is a waking state in which we are aware of the external world. There is the dream state in which we are no longer aware of the external world, but in which we are still aware of our thoughts, and our thoughts go berserk. But still, our thoughts are able to tell a story. However, this story, the correlation length of this story is relatively short. In other words, there is no much continuity after a while between the point of departure and the point of arrival. You see what I mean, right? So, for a little while, it gets more or less, it remains correlated, but then this correlation gets lost. Which means that the correlation time in the dream state is much shorter than in the waking state. And then you go to the deep sleep state, the correlation time shortens and shortens up to a point where one mind event and the next one have no correlation. So then there is no story to be told. You see what I mean? There is nothing that can be memorized. It doesn't mean there are no mind events, but they are more like noise. They don't mean much, you know. There is no, so there is no structure there. So these are mind modes. What all these modes have in common is the space between the mind events, you know, which is then that's the presence in which they arise. And then there is no mind there. There is no mind experience. There is consciousness experience. That's when we go to the core of things. We go home. We go to the place where everything gets created.
When you talk about the space between, or the gap, it then makes it seem like it's something in time, that one thing happens, then there's a gap, and then something else, mind thing. Whereas I have a different sort of picture of it. I mean, the background is always there, and whether there's stuff going on or not, and it has nothing to do with gaps. I mean, it's just always infusing everything.
Yeah, you are true in that sense that it is both in time and in space-time. But our mind events, they unfold in time, if you will, really. You cannot say that a thought is, as I often say, in front or behind or on top of or below or on the right or on the left of another thought.
And I mean, I guess another image I have is there's this background and it's everything, and it's just this body mind or mind that is choosing to focus one here, or it then chooses to focus one there, but it's all there all the time.
Yeah, that's true too. That's God's mind. Yeah, it's this choosing.
I don't know. I guess it's because I have a Buddhist friend who's always trying to catch this gap, and I just sort of, it feels off in some ways, or it feels like the gap. It doesn't exist. This gap. I mean, it's always there. It's it's eternity. Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, time and space are made of this gap. But you have access to it between two thoughts. The metaphor that my teacher uses is, it's like you have the floor which is covered by all kinds of rugs. You see, and they are piled up on top of one another, and in such a dense fashion that nowhere is the floor visible. Up until at some point you have a gap between two rugs and you see a little bit of floor. At that point you think, okay, that's maybe another rug which has floor color, right? But then you keep looking, and in a different place in the room you see another gap with the same texture and temperature as the floor. And you say, okay, so perhaps between these two there is a continuum underneath, you see.
But like in meditation, when you say we don't need to get rid of thoughts or whatever, isn't it like we just being the floor and realizing that all the rugs are kind of transparent? It doesn't.
Yeah. The best way to go to the gap, and in fact the only way to go to the gap, is to go to the gap naturally, by being invited rather than forcefully trying to go there. Because if we try forcefully to go there, what we do, we are creating a rug that is going to have the gap color,
Exactly, that's what it feels like.
you see, so that we never see the thing. So since the mind is a rug creator, all we can do is stop creating rugs, waiting for the rug to kind of dissipate at some point. The background is
Or
there.
just have them start becoming transparent so you see through them.
Also, that's another possibility. Yes, that's a good image, because in a sense, once you have seen the background, you know the background is behind the thoughts, and then you don't see the thought as a thought, but the thought has merged with the background, so to speak. You see the thought as being nothing else than the background appearing as such. So there is no separation. It's all consciousness. So everything becomes transparent in that sense. The opacity of the object was in fact our own projection. The objects in and by themselves are transparent to consciousness. That's why they are not an obstacle. Okay, no more questions here? Okay, Carlo asks the following question. When considering I am that, whatever it is that is hearing these words, or seeing this, when there is a neutrality about the observation, if I ask, what is the evidence that this awareness is limited? There doesn't seem to be any such evidence. Although I am aware, I may not have been looking carefully enough, as this understanding of non-limitation seems rather volatile. However, when noticing a feeling, e.g., feeling of slight restriction or mild unhappiness or discomfort, and then, if I consider I am that, whatever it is, that is feeling these feelings, and ask about the evidence of limitation, it certainly does seem very limited. I notice that I want the feeling of clarity, and the restricted feeling usually persists. If, on the other hand, I ask what is it that which is aware of these feelings, the observation seems to point towards there being no evidence of this awareness being limited, although the viewpoint may return afterwards to being identified with the restriction. Have I been approaching this in a way which could be helpful? Or do you think that I am deceiving myself in some way? How should I proceed with this investigation? You say that when noticing a feeling, for instance, slight restriction or discomfort, and then considering, I am that, whatever it is that is feeling this feeling, and ask about the evidence of limitation, it certainly does seem very limited. That is not my experience. It shouldn't be your experience either. So my suggestion is to keep looking at it at the level of feeling and at the level of perception until it becomes crystal clear to you that there is no experiential difference whatsoever in this regard between the thoughts or the feelings, between the words or the external perceptions and the feeling. You will discover then that the feeling that made you seemingly limited was in fact a bundle of bodily sensations. And then you'll be able to contemplate your bodily sensations with the same detachment as you can contemplate external objects. Just as through the contemplation of your thoughts, you can reach the same detachment of contemplating your thoughts as you could contemplate clouds crossing the sky. So that would be the next step, if you will, in your investigation. Generally speaking, on the spiritual path, whatever we have understood on the level of thought usually can be transposed on the level of feelings or on the level of perceptions, and conversely. In this way, we constantly expand the investigations by what we have discovered, by applying to the next realm what we have already discovered in another realm. Elizabeth, in yesterday's dialogue, you said, as you often do, that any form of understanding transcends the mind. While I agree that an aha moment feels as though it emerges from a space beyond dualistic mind, what I'm curious about is how there seem to be more and less true or more and less accurate forms of understanding. So, for instance, in the realm of physics, we have Newton's apocryphal moment with the apple, out of which understanding gravity emerged. And yet this understanding seemed not to include what would be the later and apparently more complete understanding via Einstein of gravity as a distortion of space-time. So if understanding always emerges from the realm of pure awareness, i.e. is an expression of what is unlimited, then how do we account for what seem to be partial understandings? Is the more and less simply something that mind adds onto the understanding after the fact? You know, the Newtonian physics is true within its realm of validity. So in that sense, it cannot be said that another theory is more true. Another theory has a more general realm to which it applies. But no theory really is true. And the understanding doesn't make a theory true. The understanding is a glimpse at truth. And then this glimpse at truth gets applied to a theory. A musician, a composer, may have a glimpse at beauty and find a beautiful melody. I think of Schubert. And then it will, out of this melody, create a piece. And this piece, because it doesn't have the talent for development that Beethoven had, for instance, may be a little repetitive, so maybe not perfect, maybe not, but nevertheless, the little melody in it is beautiful, and it comes from that place, has the freshness, has the beauty of the place it came from. So in this case, the little melody of Newton, you know, the big ball of the earth, the small ball of the apple, and their mutual interaction at a distance, a force at a distance, that was unheard of. You know, that was the insight. So it's an insight of truth, or into truth, from which the fisherman comes back with the result. So the reservoir of truth is infinite, but the hands of the fisherman are limited. The mind is limited. So although the reservoir is infinite, the limited mind take from it whatever it can. So it's never complete, it's never perfect. So what is there in the mind is always just a fragment, like a reflection of the infinite reservoir of truth. Catherine, I had to travel to the Netherlands for work, and I was quite annoyed because of the change in the YouTube format for the recording of the teachings. When I arrived in the place for the scientific meeting, I started to watch the recordings of the morning, and my annoyance grew. I felt like the cutting of the movie in 50 minutes part was almost not bearable. After 5 minutes, I had almost forgotten about the previous cutting when it happened again. I managed to get some intellectual information, but it was extremely painful. The experience was really the opposite as it was before. To tell you the truth, I don't know what to think about such a big annoyance. It is as if I was used to something very precious to me done in one way, and now that the rules have changed, I cannot enjoy it anymore. Is it ignorance or not there? I don't think there is ignorance. There is a message. Or is it normal for the body to get annoyed when it anticipated the joy in a certain way and suddenly rules have changed, which act as a joy spoiler? Yes, I understand your frustration, and it's normal, and it's nice of you to express it. We find a way, as much as we can, to alleviate that. Please let me know whether, because there are two different issues. One is the quality of the YouTube viewing, and the other thing is the separation, which we do now, question by question. If you can play the entire satsang question by question, and you are just a 1 second interruption between questions, it's as good as continuous. You don't miss anything. However, those among us who want to go to a specific question can in this way navigate much more easily. Now, regarding the YouTube, if it is a quality of YouTube that is a problem, then we will find another way. We will upload those on Vimeo, if Vimeo is a better choice. So that will be an easy fix to the problem. Yes, Magdi, yes, I am aware of this glare on the screen. And it's due, I think, to the fact that the camera is facing the setting sun. So these are reflections. We'll see what we can do. Echo in the sound. Some of you is complaining that there is an echo in the sound. I don't know whether that is the case for everybody. Please let me know if you experience this, like Magdi, or let me know. Yes, somebody turned the light off. Yeah, I don't know, it will help, but... Mary, I seem to experience the idea/feeling of timelessness also in my daily routine. Spacelessness, however, seems to elude me. possibly because the idea of the millions of light years and beyond the infinite universe spans. How can I bring spacelessness closer so that the infinite universe is also part of my everyday experience, or rather me part of it? Just eliminate the boundaries of your body in your perceptual experience. The way I recommend to proceed is to start with objects that are near you. It is only the first, in these out-of-body experiences, it is only the first inches that are difficult. So, with your eyes closed, feel that your body is expanded beyond its usual borders. Like as you hear the sounds, that the sounds are in you instead of being outside. So then with your eyes closed you have the experience of this expansion. And then as you open your eyes, try to keep this experience of expansion alive. If you shrink back to your usual borders, close your eyes, repeat the experience again, and open your eyes. Do that regularly until there is no difference between the experience of expansion while the eyes are closed or the eyes are open. Then the moment you are expanded up to the limits of the room you are in, to expand up to the outpost of the universe is a piece of cake. This exercise that may seem to be childish is in fact very important. It is somehow trying to feel, to experience the world in accordance with non-duality. Murray, would you speak about the relationship between the willingness to let everything fall apart and spiritual liberation? Well, the willingness to let everything fall apart may be some form of laziness, of giving up. In the spiritual liberation, there is an enthusiasm for it. There is really a great love, a great energy moving in this direction. It is not, oh well, I quit. No, not at all this type of feeling, but more of a growing interest that has arisen and that keeps growing. Of course, this growing interest may bring about a letting go of all kinds of activities that, out of a new lack of interest for those. But the enthusiasm for the truth should keep growing. That's the touchstone, that's the benchmark, if you will, to monitor. Where is my enthusiasm? Where is my interest for the quest for the truth. Monica, in the language of Advaita, are consciousness and self coincident? And in your language, yes. Consciousness and self are coincident. Self-consciousness and self or Atman or soul, self, consciousness, awareness, all of those I are synonyms. What is important is to understand the identity there is between consciousness, self, on the one hand, and reality on the other hand. Any more questions here?